We got an understanding. We're on a mission from God.
They shouldn't have given you ashy blokes YouTube.
Cursed be the ground for our sake. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for us. For out of the ground we were taken, for the dust we are. And to the dust we shall return.
I'm done with life, and it's all Jermaine's fault. It's always Jermaine's fault. I'm done.
All right, you good people. Back here after a break, punching the clock. Hump day for all you working class people. Hump day. And this is going to be a hump day video. This was actually requested by quite a few people. I've sat on this for about a week. So I'll go ahead and get rid of some of this backlog that I have. I got a lot of backlog. This is it's actually it's about an hour and a half long. We're gonna cover a little bit of it because there's some things, some good stuff that he has in here. And the rest we'll put it in the description. You guys can actually go see the whole thing and go give the brother a like and a subscribe, or at least a thumbs up for actually a very good channel. Not bad for a pro black channel. So one of the few that I probably, in fact, probably the few I'm actually going to subscribe to. Anyhow, let's go ahead and welcome people, and then we'll get to business. Get down to business. Roddy, the cloud engineer, okay? Dusty cloud engineer, okay? He's first. Adric's number 2, when it's on, okay? Captain Obvious, what's going on? Batting third, okay? There's Cleanup, Ray Knowles. Must-see TV is changing for the better, I guess so. Well, the environment changes, they got to change with it. So, Quentin, what's going on? Gundam, and I think, they have all these subscribers, they're probably losing viewership, so that's probably why they're changing. Gundam, what's going on? Shannon, what's going on? Luther, what's happening? Eddie, what's going on? Martin, what's happening? Online Elementary, what's going on? Rachel, is that your name, or is that you talking to somebody? Cutting up with the Joneses, what's happening? Louis, what's happening? Ilias, what's up? Independent POV, what's going on? Chance, what's happening? Barry Little, what's going on, man? Shout out to Tommy Curry, no chicken. Heard that. Now you know this is going to be good. It's actually a pretty good interview, man. In fact, he gave me some references. One book I had to, I should have ordered it on eBay instead of buying it, but I wanted the quote. So, Chance, what's going on? Instant Media, what's happening? Tony Smith, what's happening? From Killeen, all right. Yeah, my brother lives in Killeen, okay? Right outside the Army base, Army Town, okay? The biggest military hood in Texas, okay? LAXT, what's going on? Okay. All right. Oh, you did, okay. Uh, oh, I have to look. I got to go back and look at your chart. I don't. You're an old soul if you're in the 12th house, okay? That means you're on your you're in the last cycle. Carl, what's happening? The Black Toxic, what's going on? Shannon Green, what's going on? Wergens, what's going on? Blanco, what's going on? Snowman, what's up? Before your 6:30 pre, okay, for your pregame. All right. Good luck, man. With how you think it's gonna go without Caitlin suiting up? Tunnel Runner, what's going on? Him tunnel running his reparations. Okay. J Mar, what's happening? Jesse, what's going on? Pan the Man, what's happening? Watch from Netherlands. I'm jumping ship over to the pirate side now. I heard that. Ray, what's happening? Johnny, what's going on? Michael, what's happening? Calvin, Willie R, what's going on? Binkanen, what's going on? DF, Don Calypso, what's happening? If Clarence Jr. tries to derail Wilson, I'm putting him on a 24 timeout, hour timeout. I heard that. Little Maple Leaf, Kennard, what's going on? Don Ducci, what's going on? DF, LAXT, Chef Mike, what's happening? What you cooking, Chef? Uh, let's see what else we got. Mr. J Matt, what's happening? Jay Shabazz, what's happening? Don Ducci, what's going on? Kangaroo, what's up? I'm listening. Pragmatic, what's happening? Galen Wells, what's going on? Good day. I missed the MJ OZ. You can't. Okay. I have to. I get a copyright, so I have to find a replacement for it. But we'll see if we can cook something up. I like the can't you can't win. I got that from a Dallas Cowboy fan after every losing season. He gets on the goalpost and he sings "You Can't Win." LAPD SWAT, what's going on? Suffering from pedestrian fatigue. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Superstar, what's happening? Terry Folds. D. Scott, where you been, man? How you been, man? You doing good? DJ Scan, what's going on? Rise, what's happening? Money Motion. D. Skeely. D. Ski, what's going on, man? Landon, the cost is high. Yes, it is. Mark Muhammad Sensei, after rewatching, I could really see what a great job structuring and explaining you did on marriage versus FOMO. When we waste your time with senseless arguing, it's a picture of our community. Yeah, it is. Um, I wasn't trying to blame anybody, okay, and um, when I was talking about FOMO, I was trying to explain a phenomenon. I wasn't really trying to cast any kind of, blame on women or not. They can want what they want. I'm just trying to explain um, the shift that we're seeing. But people take shit personally. Savant, what's going on? Two Trib, Dr. Els, what's going on? Cameron Shabazz, appreciate it. Obsidian Q, what's happening? There's Yo Adrian, what's up? Salute out to the pedestrianologists and the civilian philosophers. There's a lot of them. Kangaroo, what's up? B, what's my name in Swahili? By the way, um, I got to look it up, man. It's at the tip of my tongue. I just can't remember what it is. And, you have to look at it in context. A Split Jim, what's going on? Victor Creed, what's going on? Hurricane Greg, what's happening? Chef Mike says tonight's dinner tonight is baked chicken wings with habanero, mango glaze, black eyed peas with curry rice and collard greens. Beverage with a new Pilsner. Oh, from a local brewery. Tell me how the Pilsner is, man. Well, L, what's happening? Trump commuted the sentence of Larry Hoover. Okay, cool. Babu, Adrian says, when you going to drop that video on how China and Russia are ahead of us in technology? Because West is a gynocracy. Uh, I might, part of it I probably will do tomorrow because I was just looking at the video today, and she was actually going over it, some of the stuff. So I might do that tomorrow. There's one other video I was looking for that I can't find that goes along. There's a companion with it, but part of it I will do tomorrow because I want to go over the video of what she's talking about, the shift from um, a male-led, especially in the academy, male-led academy to a female-led academy, and the differences. Volcanus, what's going on? People only take it personal because they don't want to own up to their choices, and the trade-offs and consequences came with it. No bailouts for them. Larry's 75 years old. Why not? What's up, BGS? Oh yeah, yeah. Talking about Larry Hoover. Yeah. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get busy and get this party started. Um, Speed it up just a tad. And this is from I Never Knew TV, The Real Cost of Being a Black Man in America Beyond the Headlines with Dr. Simon Curry. He says some very interesting stuff. I think as he gets older, he's less diplomatic in the liberal um, academia as he used to be. He's a little bit more forward. I guess he's kind of getting tired. So anyhow, let's go ahead and speed it up just a tad. 1.25. So we can get through some of it. And as the Joker says, and here we go. Okay.
Be careful how we use that word. But the people who are trying to study black males at a very serious level, who are working with black men, who are interacting with young black boys, who are not using deficit models to talk about them being pathological or them being prone to violence, those people are going to have vastly different views than what you get, say, from a blog or from everyday internet sources or even internet pundits. There are really two framings that we can kind of point to in general. The first one looks at black men very much as misogynist, violent, aspiring patriarchs who
Yeah. In fact, there was just a PhD academic. I think she's out of Boston that was saying basically the same kind of rhetoric that he's talking about black males being violent and want to be aspiring patriarchs, the kind of bullshit. So the very things that he's talking about, okay, I just saw, okay, I listened to parts of it. I didn't really listen to the whole thing because all it is intersectional feminist BLM bullshit. But that is very prevalent in the academy. And what he's saying is 100% right. That's why he had to leave.
utilize rape, abuse, etc., to gain
Yes,
power.
to gain
Now, this
power.
kind of
Exactly.
thinking was popularized during the 1970s and 80s
Yes.
when white feminists, and I want to emphasize that, white feminists start analyzing the potential threat that black men had once
Yeah.
they
Yes. It wasn't just feminists. It's also your so-called white patriarchal power, your leaders. Okay, they handed over the feminist movement to white white feminists. Okay, they handed over the whole country into the hands of the feminist movement because of the rise of not only black male power but also white male power. It's probably more about white male power than it was about black male power. But continuing.
were integrated into American society. So you had people like Shulamith Firestone, Susan Brown Miller, Williams and Holmes in their book, The Second Assault, articulate a view of black men that said that black men are driven primarily by their sexuality and deviance, be by white men. The piece that's not often talked about is that those white women saw these black men utilizing rape as the way to imitate white male power.
Yeah, that's almost 100%. Even today, okay. This, in fact, this going crazy on X, okay, Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, right? Um, where she's saying exactly this 50-year-old rhetoric that he's talking about, okay? So so basically, what he's saying is not like it's ancient. It's going on right now. Still is.
So they very much believed that black men were naturally more culturally or biologically prone to rape more than white men.
Yes.
And they're building this not from some kind of random racist idea, but this was the dominant science at the time. Looking at people like Benjamin Mirror's forcible patterns of rape or patterns of forcible rape, they got the idea that, hey, look, black men are going to rape women in their race more than white men rape white women in their race. And
Yeah.
because of that, we can say that there's something culturally deficient or deviant about black men and boys that other groups of men don't have to deal with. This kind of thinking was then extended into black feminist historiography.
Yes.
You see this kind of creeping in Michelle Wallace's work. You see this in Jean Noble's work. You see this in Patricia Hill Collins and Kimberly Crenshaw's work, where Kimberly Crenshaw is actually citing the sexual assault. So what happens now is that that's become the popular pop feminist, pop cultural commentary on
And it of today, it still is. It never changed.
black men and boys in the United States, and it runs rampant. I mean, we've had, even in the UK, we've had people, apply for positions that have utilized these kinds of tropes around black men. And when asked to justify them, people just say, oh, that's just a debate. It's not a debate when you're utilizing racist stereotypes to talk about a people and then say that that gets a default position. So, I mean, if you're looking at contemporary people who advocate this view of black males, you're thinking about the conscious Lees, you're thinking about the FD signifiers, you're thinking about, even Jared Ball.
Oh, yep. The whole bread tube, what call it? They call it cornbread tube now. The Black Bread Tube Collective saying exactly the same thing that he's talking about.
Kind of sidelining the fact that black men and boys are victims of child physical abuse, or black men are victims of intimate partner violence. These pundits have to eliminate all the data that we've known for the last 40 or 50 years to kind of create this mythology of black men as being toxic and problematic.
Yep.
We don't see antecedents of violence influencing how black men are constructed, socialized, traumatized into having negative social interactions or negative, intimate relationships with women. So we see black boys, we may say, well, what if that black boy is being abused by his mother? Because we have tremendous rates of child.
In fact, there was just as an aside, see if I can find it. I should have pulled it up. Where there was a black female scholar saying the exact same thing about where mothers abuse the sons. Okay, somebody sent it to me. Hold on a second. See if I can pull this up. Where she said the exact same thing, right? And she's talking. She was actually talking to a black male critic. Okay, the guy that the guy there, she actually talked about why black men don't go to college. Okay, let's see. Let's go ahead and pull this up. Let's see. Unmute it.
I get into a lot of trouble, particularly with feminist scholars over this. They like to look at male violence and men's attitudes about women and say it's all patriarchy. And I'm not dismissing patriarchy. I'm not dismissing structural racism. But if you really want to understand how some men relate to women in terms of their attitudes and behaviors, you have to go back to their earliest childhood experiences with their mothers. And when we look at the data, particularly in Black communities on child abuse, the data tells us that the majority of the abuse and the fatalities are perpetuated by women. And so if you want to figure out why a man is a misogynist, you've got to go back to those early childhood experiences. And people don't want to have that conversation because then we have to talk about maternal violence and women's complicity in creating the very men who hate us. So I get into a lot of trouble.
So that is basically, you can see, I have to credit the Black manosphere especially for this, okay? Because until we start bringing PhDs into this space, this conversation did not shift. So I have to give a heartfelt thanks to Dr. Johnson for being brave enough to pierce that veil and step over that line, okay, and bring his not only himself but his most. We have PhDs in the space, but they never came out with their CV publicly. Okay? He was one of the first that did it, okay, and he brought others in, and that started to change this conversation. Okay, conversation had to change, especially at the elite level. Now it's slipping into politics and every place else. So basically, that was like I said, the academics and the political sphere was the next step that had to be taken, and Dr. Johnson brave enough, okay, and loving enough to actually take a chance with his career and his CV and his job and cross over and start this wave. So I can never thank him enough. Okay, I can never thank him enough. Okay, because Dr. Curry's work would be no good to us without Dr. Johnson. So um, I have a heartfelt thanks for that brother, my boy, my friend, my compatriot, man, for being brave enough to step over because man, that is an act of courage to put your livelihood and your career on the line, man, for a cause. Okay, it really is, and I can't thank him enough. So anyway, back to where we were with Dr. Curry. Okay. All right. Back to where we were. I just wanted to make that an aside because I just wanted to highlight what he said, okay, and show you another perspective out of a woman's voice saying the exact same thing because that's what the data shows, okay? That is what the data shows. So let's get back to it.
Our maltreatment in the black community, much of which happens at the hands of black women. Some of it happens in the hands of black men, but black boys in general have tremendous exposure to personal violence and abuse,
Yes,
during their
yes.
early years.
And like the young lady was just saying, right? You have to go back to the earliest, okay? The earliest, okay? And black women, as far as child abuse toward children, is anywhere from 5 to 10 times higher if you look at the stats, especially when it comes to death, okay? I think for the deaths at the hands of a black male, not necessarily the father, but the black male inside the home, I think the death of a child of an infant is maybe 300, and I think for a female it's like 2,000. So it's like five to 10 times higher, okay, as far as abuse committed by the mother. Now that's just what's reported.
Years. And we don't ask the fundamental question, well, how does that then affect how they see relationships, personal relationships, loving relationships with future partners? We've never asked how the environment that black men and boys come from influences them over their life course into
Exactly. That's what she just said, right? We don't look at that, and the thing is not only do they refuse to look at it, basically they shut down that kind of argument, and until the black manosphere got behind these PhDs and put pressure on these institutions because they're afraid of us. Believe it or not, they're afraid of us. They're afraid of us like hell. And so where they used to fire these kind of men that will actually speak up, they don't do that anymore because they're scared. Okay, because they know that we have their backs. And before there was no repercussions for letting somebody a black scholar go because he spoke out. Okay, now there's actually repercussions that a university will have to face if they do some shit like that.
adulthood or into their teenager years. And we like to blame them for that. So these pundits like to concentrate on that. They like to say, hey, look at the numbers. They say that black men disproportionately abuse black women. And then that's when the experts come in, like epidemiologists, public health scholars, social workers say, wait, well, this idea of patriarchy that you're working with, that men are abusing women for patriarchy, that doesn't fit the cultural context.
Exactly. It doesn't fit the cultural context. It doesn't. It doesn't show up in the numbers
Of black people, because black men aren't just abusers; they're also abused. Black men are not just dominating the home because the black home was not constructed as an entity of male domination.
It was not, and we know that's one thing. That's one thing. It's been documented. The thing is, the black manosphere has been documenting the exact opposite in the black community. Okay, and even as bold as like BLM and other feminists say that, right? The black males do not dominate the home.
It was for the white race. So then how do you just translate this idea of male domination in the home among white people to mean the same thing as male domination in the home for black people? See, there's a cultural gap there. But these pundits don't have to attend to any of the culturally relevant and culturally specific antecedents of black violence within our communities or within our homes. They just repeat the dominant idea that they know flies with pretty much white liberal thinking, which is patriarchy, sexism, and misogyny. So by not listening to the experts, what we have is this deliberate misrepresentation on social media.
No, notice you say deliberate misrepresentation. It's not just on social media; it's actually in the in academia too.
It's a very specific, politic. I mean, the people making these commentaries are self-avowed black feminists and liberals. They believe that black men should be chastised anytime they don't fall in line with liberal thinking.
Yep.
God forbid black men said the Democratic Party.
We just saw that with the Democratic Party and the black females, right?
Or liberal party platform doesn't benefit them. Somehow they want to be right-wing conservatives. There's all kinds of things.
All that stuff that he probably would not have said 2 years ago, he's saying now, okay? Because now he has the space to say it.
That black men are held accountable for, that flies within popular media and the popular imagination, that really just can't be shown within the research. If we were going on a strictly research basis, right? So we're looking at black male attitudes, we would find that black men are extremely progressive on issues of childcare, gender equality, economic inequality. They're very akin to women's issues on abortion. They're very sensitive to linked fate, or the close relationship that black men and women's political, heritage and legacies have to each other, that we benefit and lift each other up. That's what the research shows. But if you go off social media, you would think that every black man's a rapist, compensating for his inability to be a white man, and ultimately violent from the womb.
I just heard a PhD professor spit the same shit that he's talking about, the negative shit, for a whole hour. I've had like 10 people send me her stuff, and I may show a little bit of it a little later, but just to show that what he's saying is not off. I mean, I know you guys probably hear it all the time, okay, about the negative connotations of black. We just heard that from Sabby Sab, right? The same kind of negative bullshit that keeps getting spun.
And it's this difference, right? It's this difference in how we speak about black men, or what our starting point is speaking about black men really are. I think this most recently, this was kind of shown with the New York Times release of Howard University, that only 19% of black men were on campus at an HBCU. For anybody that studies black men, this isn't surprising whatsoever. But what ended up happening was you had this kind of condemnation of black men. So anytime there's a disparity where black men are doing worse than another group, it doesn't become because of some kind of institutional racism or discrimination, some barriers that are preventing black men from success. No, it's exactly. There's something wrong with the mind.
There's something wrong. In fact, somebody sent me something, the 9 ways that black men fail. I can't remember the whole title of it, where it's their fault. Okay.
Culture of black men. So they don't believe they could, or as Tori said, black men don't believe they could succeed in college. That's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense, right? Black men have fought historically to be in college. They fought for higher education. The issue is the barriers. The issue is whether or not, because of high levels of discrimination, and this is what Chetty's study showed a couple years ago, even black men with college degrees that work hard, that are born into the middle class, end up falling to the lower classes, right? Why? Because the high rates of job discrimination, what we call in black male studies, the anti-black misandry, the negative conceptualizations of black men, even when they're educated, to be associated with criminality, or to be even treated as if they have a criminal record, decreases the ability of them to earn the same thing that their white male or white female counterparts earn in those contexts. So these pundits don't attend to that specificity. They just attend to, well, this is my view of black men. This is the view that gets me liked. So we'll say all black men are deficit, deviant, and ultimately can be despised.
You brought up a great point, right? So people fail to acknowledge the fact that they themselves, or the institution, acts in a manner of society. They feel like they're for whatever reason, when you go to a job, the job doesn't have the same perspective as black people as society, and black men aren't impacted by that perspective, and they don't want to acknowledge the perspective they have, how it's been internalized, and how it impacts their view, also their behavior and their interaction with that person. So I think there's the denial about the biases people have towards black men and how it impacts their behavior.
No, there absolutely is.
You know why? You know why? Say it with me, fellas. Say it with me.
I'm done with life, and it's all Jermaine's fault. It's always Jermaine's fault. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what I think is part of kind of the liberal mythology, is that the liberal feminist ideology says that to be male is to be privileged, but that's not what the data shows. That's not what any study shows. Most studies,
that is the mythology. Okay, the data has never shown that. Okay. They say that black men are privileged and they're patriarchs and they're ruling over black women. When you look at the data, we're at the bottom. Make that shit make sense.
Studies in Western society show that being male associates the target male group. So if you're a Palestinian man or a Muslim man or a black man, with danger. You know, this is why Black male studies scholars speak so adamantly about misandric aggression, is that we have popular conceptualizations of how gender operates, but it's not backed up by any of the social or social psychological studies or data. Right? When you look at a man, you see that man as a possible encapsulation of every negative thing of an alien race. So if I see a black man, I see savagery, I see criminality, I see harm. So what we're expected to believe by these, you know, social media pundits, if you will, is that the popular discussion or concept of patriarchy that says that all men are privileged, right? When black men suffer some of the most egregious disadvantages within the society, incarceration, premature death, during COVID, suffered the most mortality but wasn't recognized for it, employment discrimination, educational discrimination, undereducated, et cetera. When you look at all these different issues and you say, well, that's still privileged because they're a man. Well, is that how they're treated? So black men report having some of the highest rates of both direct discrimination, like active discrimination, as well as passive discrimination with on jobs or just in society, being treated differently than everyone else. But those studies, that all the work we get from actually investigating reality in the world, don't seem to matter much, because we have this guiding ideology, right, that tells us, no, you're privileged. Well, the effect of that is you don't think that men suffer by being men. You think that the stereotypes that cause black men to be shot walking across the street, that cause black men to be disregarded whenever they're sexually assaulted. Black boys have some of the highest rates of child sexual assault in the United States of any other group, but because they're men, they can't be sexually vulnerable.
Exactly, because they're men. Not because they're men, because they're male.
These kinds of feminist and liberal ideations of black maleness prevent us from understanding the vulnerability of the group. So there's no reason for people to think that black men suffer on the basis of maleness, not because it's not true, but because that's what everyone says. And what I think is one of the most deplorable aspects of these kinds of social media pundits is that they want to preserve viewership, right? And this is what I find to be greatly disingenuous about it.
And in other words, they're panda bears.
To preserve viewership, they will tell people that black boys are black men who suffer domestic abuse, or black boys who are survivors of child physical and child sexual abuse. Their stories don't matter, because what's more important is focusing on the idea, and it's just the idea, that violence is completely male directed from some kind of deviant or want to be powerful over women. You see, when the Duluth model was created, that's the name of the model. Michael IBMOR and Ellen Pitts created this idea that patriarchy causes domestic violence, that men beat women for power within the household. They only looked, I think there were a few Asians, but it was a predominant view of white people. They didn't ask black people, they didn't study black people about why violence breaks out in their communities. Right before the 1980s, the view about domestic violence was that black people, men and women, killed each other because they were culturally incapable of having strong nuclear families the ways that white people did. You see,
very true. Clark said that, and Moynihan said that.
Before you got feminist interpretation,
that was in academic studies.
No, that was academic studies. So I mean, you could look at like if you look at Wolfgang and Ferracuti's book on the subculture of violence theory, they study Philadelphia. And they were asking, well, why is it that black women seem to kill more black men, have a higher homicide rate against black men, right, than other races of people?
And in fact, I actually bought that book and actually have that quote that he's talking about. Okay, and that was from a 1965 study in Philadelphia, right, by Wolfgang. That actually said it exactly what he's getting. Now pay attention what he's going to say. Okay, really, I want you guys to actually really focus on what he says about this, about what they thought before 1970 about the black community and violence. Okay, listen to what he says.
And their explanation was, well, black men aren't very.
Let me go ahead and slow this down to normal speed, okay, for you guys. Okay. Let me slow this down to normal speed, because I really want you guys to hear this, because when I bought the book just for that quote, believe it or not, okay? I spent $50 on that book just for that quote.
Black people about why violence breaks out in their communities. Right before the 1980s, the view about domestic violence was that black people, men and women, killed each other because they were culturally incapable of having strong nuclear families the ways that white people did. You see, before you got a feminist interpretation,
that was in academic studies.
Yeah, that was academic studies. So I mean, you could look at like if you look at Wolfgang and Ferracuti's book on the subculture of violence theory, they study Philadelphia, and they were asking, well, why is it that black women seem to kill more black men, have a higher homicide rate against black men, right, than other races of people? And their explanation was, well, black men aren't very good patriarchs. Black homes are matriarchal. So the black woman having to take on the head of household role tend to shoot and kill these black men in their homes to discipline them because black men are not like white men. They don't know how to keep a nuclear family.
In other words, they're frustrated with. They said they were frustrated with the black men because they weren't like white men. They weren't good patriarchs. So, like you said, they did it to punish them.
Intact. See, everything, this is what I say is that
It's Wolfgang, the subculture of violence theory.
all the theories that we use to explain black reality come from deficit models. Because you're not like white.
Let's see if I can find it. I'll show you guys real quick. Because everybody's going to keep asking me about this book, okay? It's actually an expensive ass book too, because it was free, and then they bought the rights to it. That means they're trying to kill it. Subculture of violence. By Wolfgang. Okay. Let me go ahead and give you a. Let's see, real quick. That's the name of the book, Subculture of Violence Theory by Wolfgang. Okay. That's the book. And I just bought it. Okay. Should have paid less. You know, I could have if I had got it on eBay. But that's the book.
People, something is wrong with your family, something's wrong with your consciousness, something's wrong with the way you behave in civil society. So you've taken this kind of drudgery of black pathology and you just picked one out, patriarchy.
Thank you, Al.
To explain black people. But black people, I mean, even back in the 1930s, you had them saying that, well, because black people are savages and don't respect the union of marriage, black men and women aren't very faithful to one another. And the effect of them not being faithful to one another is that you have black women that kill black men because of infidelity, right? And this is in the 1930s. So they said this was part of the segregation and psychology of black America. You can pick any time period and you'll find the same phenomenon. What we know when we look at science is that people who are segregated within poor neighborhoods, people who are segregated within violent neighborhoods, will also have higher rates of violence within their households. That's across the board for men, women, children, etc. Children will fight children. Children will be misbehaved. Children will lash out. There are studies in urban black communities where black boys who are dating black girls in junior high have more experiences and reports of physical violence during dating. So there's
yes, that's the Klingon theory. Okay. My grandson, uh, uh, because he said he liked the little girl, she used to fight him all the time. Okay, it's a private Catholic school, and the only reason that they usually get into it physically all the time is because he said he liked her. Because he said he liked her. That's it. But the thing is, that's why if you go to my Black Pill Gnostic page, right? That's why I said the psychological hobbling of of black males, right? Okay, where I use the example of Misery, the movie Misery, where she broke the officer's ankle so that he couldn't escape. Okay, and after she did it, she said, "God, I love you," after committing a heinous violent act against him. That's black women. How many times do we see black women in rage, a fit of rage because they think that their man is cheating over them, run them over with a car, okay, or shoot him, or run into a light pole, or commit heinous violence against him? Okay, that's very common. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about that. And then all of a sudden they say, "Well, girl, why you shooting?" "Oh, girl, because I was going through something."
dating abuse there as well. These pundits are so dishonest because they're trying to push a certain ideology for viewership. The reality of the situation is if you don't take up some kind of intersectional or black feminist view of violence in the black community, you won't get to the top of the algorithm on YouTube.
Facts.
So you see this with the signifiers, you see this with the conscious leads, you see this with the Jared Balls.
Facts. I might use this use this as a portion for a standalone. Facts.
Watching at one point, I watched the show, and one of the guests, I'm not familiar with the gentleman, but he made this comment. He said, "Look, because there are not shelters for black men, that suggests that the problem of male violence in the black community is not that significant."
Wow.
Suggesting that because there were shelters for women, we all knew this was a major societal problem. Now, let me talk. I just want to say a moment. Just think about the ignorance of this. We live in white supremacist societies where white people determine the issues, the institutions, and the kinds of investments that are put into social problems. Now, there's no major.
You know what? The biggest, since I was bused to predominantly white schools, my interaction was with white people. Okay. My biggest problem with dating black women is getting past the verbal and physical violence that they tried to exhibit upon me. I wasn't used to that. Okay, I wasn't used to being hit or being verbally abused. In fact, even to this day, I do not accept verbal abuse from my women. I don't. You can't. I don't allow my women to yell at me. I don't allow them to call me out my name. I don't allow that. Okay, because I don't do it. And sometimes they really want to cuss me out. They really want to hit me. They really want to put hands to me, but I don't allow it. Okay, and the biggest fear is not that they're going to get hit back. The biggest fear is that I will leave them. I told them, there's lines that they cross. Okay, the first thing I tell a woman that I'm getting involved with on the first date. Okay, if we're going to get serious and become exclusive, I said the first thing you have to know, you can't put your hands on me, because the day you put your hands on me is the day I'm going to leave you. Period. And no looking back, no explanation. You already know ahead of time. You put your hands on me, I'm going to leave you. And basically, that's one of the few reasons why I've never really been hit by a black woman. Okay, because they're more afraid of you leaving them than you hitting them back. Believe it or not. Anyhow, continuing.
Institutions for racism. It's not like the United States and different municipalities have said racism is a major social problem. Let's create.
In fact, my daughter, she's 30. She's going to be 37 this year. Okay. My daughter has never heard me raise my voice at her mother. My kids have never saw me raise a hand to their mother or raise my voice to their mother. They've never seen that. Ever in their whole entire life. They've never seen me do it, not once. They've never seen me do it. So that's one thing I'm proud of. Because as a black man raised in a Southern black family, for the most part, right, that was a constant. And I swore that when I got to be an adult, when I got in a relationship, that was not going to be part of my lifestyle. I'd rather be a monk for the rest of my life than put up with that shit. Okay, and I've never put up with it.
Centers for the trauma of racism, or shelters for people who are victims of racism. Could we then conclude that there's no racism in the society? Right? We don't see many shelters for disabled people. People are still pushing for visibility of domestic abuse against the disabled and the elderly. Should we thereby conclude that there's no abuse against elder population or disabled population?
Wow.
Of course not. But when it comes to black men, such kinds of pronouncements and proclamations are considered serious analysis because they perpetuate the political leanings of the time. Namely, that women are abused, that they're not abusers, despite the fact that we have 40 or 50 years of data saying otherwise, that black men are only abusing for power and to compensate for what they lack, and that violence in the black community can be almost totally explained by the deviance of black men and boys. All three of those things are untrue when we look at the data.
And only by the deviance of black boys. Guess what? Say it with me, class.
I'm done. I'm done with life, and it's all Jermaine's fault. It's always Jermaine's fault. I'm done.
All three of those things are untrue when I talk to people, black men and boys who have been victimized by child physical, sexual abuse, etc. Pundits are not interested in expertise; they're interested in viewership, and it's a shame because people take these people as being serious.
How has the often overlooked abuse of Black males, physical, mental, and sexual, contributed to the hypersexualization of Black men and challenges in building healthy relationships?
Oh, but I mean that's our lecture itself. Let me say briefly. The first problem is the disregard, right? So when we look at the child physical and sexual abuse literature, we see that victims of abuse tend to either lash out, become abused themselves, or develop dependency relationships with other people who continue cycles of abuse. Okay. Within the Black community, we have high levels of exposure to violence, not because of our culture or because we're Black people, but because we're in environments and neighborhoods that are impoverished, that are violent, that are neglected, etc. So there are structural factors, right, living in a racist society that put Black people in contact with violence. Now, that being said, that violence that's in neighborhoods and in communities bleeds into the household. And these Black boys are going to experience that. When you have a Black boy that's physically abused, when you have a Black boy that can no longer trust the sanctity and sacredness of the home or the parents, that creates distrust. It creates a kind of skepticism, if not pessimism, about the ways that the world is going to treat this young man. And they internalize that. And when I say internalize, I don't mean they become bad people, but they take note of that and it develops as part of their consciousness. We also see this as being related to suicide ideation and depression in young Black men as well. So we find that these hostile environments where the young Black boy doesn't feel safe, that he's always a victim of stress.
Can you elaborate more on that concept of battle fatigue? Because many brothers who
racial battle
know about it. It's nonstop stress, it's nonstop navigating, it's nonstop looking around and being strategic with stuff. So can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. This is, William A. Smith, a great friend of mine, colleague, developed the concept of racial battle fatigue to talk about the way that allostatic load and stress impacts the psychological and physiological aspects of Black men regulating themselves, right? That they're not on balance because they're constantly watching over their shoulder. They're on high alert, right?
I have any Black man that's been overseas, okay, outside the country, know that you're hyper aware, okay? The country could be peaceful, the city can be peaceful. Thing is, those hood instincts never leave. They never leave.
There's a constant worry about where the next threat or attack's coming, and this leads to various, real comorbidities, right? High blood pressure, diabetes, lack of sleep, unrestfulness, anxiety, depression. And we have to kind of take note about the way the environment's actually impacting Black men physiologically and psychologically, how our minds are never at rest, how we're never feeling safe, how we don't have security. This becomes a major part of how we start thinking about Black men's mental health and their life chances. So what ends up happening is Black men experience this. Black boys experience this. They experience it in school. They experience it when they see cops. They experience it within home, right? And all of this is activated within a context of abuse, with a context of neglect, a context where people say that Black men and boys don't have real problems, that they're failures naturally. So what we're seeing, just like in the Howard situation with the New York Times, what we're seeing is not them being victims of institutional discrimination. What we're seeing is the manifestation of their inadequacies. Imagine how stressful something like that would be to a young man, or someone who's trying to go to college, or someone who's in college, maybe a Black man who's a student at Howard. You see, what narrative did the nation, did Black people, did Black pundits give to better understand what this young man is going through, besides the narrative of his film? See, all of these things work in conjunction to negate the humanity and existence of Black men and boys. So when we don't recognize child sexual and child physical abuse in our communities, it's not us having this kind of battle of recognition as many pundits are trying to make it. It's about how the suffering that no one recognizes is allowed to continue because we won't preserve the safety and humanity of a Black man or a Black boy.
That's true. That is true. It's structural. But they blame it on Jermaine.
Right? Like imagine if someone was able to beat you every day. That you had, say, your mother or caretakers, your mother's friends, able to have sex with you at 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah, my mother did beat us every day, that's for sure. Okay. And it wasn't my father, it was my mother.
12 years old. Because that's the age group of these young men that are now telling us about this in their 30s and 40s. You see, when you and that's what I mean. There's a certain humbleness that comes from talking to victims. That's not interested in battles of recognition. That's interested in how did we miss the humanity of this group of people? How did this young boy not be treated as a child? Why did we not show him care? Does the society hate him? Does the people in his community hate him so much that no one said it's not right to do this to him? It's not right to beat him. It's not right to rape him. We had one story of a young man whose mother's friend used to pay him to have oral sex with her, right? Who intervenes and says that's wrong, right? As a society, we'll sit back and look at something like an R. Kelly and talk about the danger he has right? The danger he poses to black women in his community. And him and his brother were victimized, I believe, by their cousin or sister for almost a decade, right? Made to do sexual things. Not a single person intervenes and says, well, what happened to that humanity that was lost? You see, this is the danger. The danger is to say, well, look, the nature of black men is sexually deviant, so we don't have to worry about what caused it. That's just how they are. So if his older sister or his older cousin wants to use him as a sexual plaything, him and his brother, that doesn't cause any harm because that's who he is. You see, the view of black boys as being hypersexual is what allows us to disregard so heavily their humanity. And when we see these black boys who end up in bad relationships, who are depressed, who are disengaged, right, who are triggered, right, by this kind of trauma they've experienced, we say, look, there's that black man. We knew he was a criminal. We knew he was hypersexual. We knew he hated women. We knew he was a danger. The stereotypes form the basis of the logic we use to interpret black male suffering, rather than looking at black male suffering and saying, look at what the suffering is doing to take away from the humanity, the patience, and the peace that these young black men need to navigate a hostile racial world.
Unfortunately, right? It's like I call it the elephant in the room, sexual abuse. Based on the research you have done, right? What are the numbers of sexual abuse in the black community, or are there any statistics that accurately reflect closely what the numbers are?
Mm-hmm. So I'll start with the latter question. So I wrote a literature review on child sexual assault for an anthology, and we don't have accurate numbers per se because child sexual abuse cases are not part of like the CDC survey data. The CDC survey data starts at age 18 up. So most child sexual abuse happens before the age of 18, before people are adults. But we do have estimates based on specific studies in our communities that show that, say, between the ages of 9 and 14, Black boys are most likely to have an early sexual debut. So in terms of statutory rape, we know that Black boys tend to report having higher incidences of statutory rape compared to every other racial and sex group in the United States, being between Blacks, whites, and Asians, right? That doesn't tell us an exact number, but it does give us an estimate of how many young Black boys are being exposed to sex at a very, very early age, and how that exposure, because most report having that exposure due to the actions of older women, how that's not being understood and it's certainly not being treated or studied within the United States or other academic disciplines. As to the first question, it's a little complicated because for victims of child sexual abuse or child physical abuse, we do see higher incidences of sexual promiscuity and sexual risk taking. So say sex with a high number of partners without condom use. I don't know if it's correlated specifically with if they're abused by a man or a woman. We've had some, and I think in our snapshot, we had 1 or 2 men who were victimized by other men, but they reported the same kind of sexual histories that we got with men who were abused by women. So I think it's really a question of, and there could be some difference. We just don't have a large enough sample. We just haven't studied, enough survivors yet. But if you're abused sexually, it tends to psychologically prone you to either disregard for the abuser, be it man or woman, and higher sexual risk taking and promiscuity. So both of those things happen, and there's a higher chance of having a child before the age of 21 if you've been a victim of child sexual abuse. So I always hesitate with the compensation thing because I don't know if trauma necessarily should be seen as acting out on trauma as a compensatory thing, right? If a person was abused and they're searching for love, if a person was abused and they're coping with that constant loss or their inability to consent, so they appreciate multiple consensual relations, right? Who knows what that individual's searching for, right? And what we tend to do with Black boys is we'll say, oh, well, if you're abused, oh, well, it doesn't matter, you're broken, and then you're harming everyone else.
Yeah. And basically they wouldn't say that to a girl, that you're broken. Okay, they talk about healing her trauma.
To want to relate anything that Black men do for their psychological comfort as a threat to others. And what my research is really trying to push is like, well, listen, we see Black men and boys react in very similar ways that other groups react in. So if you did a study on, most of the literature is on white people. So if you do a study on white women or Black or white boys, white women or girls or Black white men and boys, you find that they've done the same thing. They have higher rates of acting out, higher rates of getting suspended from school, higher risk of having a child before the age of 20. It's the same thing. So I don't understand why with the Black man and boy, it becomes this issue of compensation with white people. It becomes, well, look, this is trauma responsive. This is coping. This is them trying to make the best out of a bad situation. And we see this language around white women all the time, right? If a white woman is abused, there's an outpouring of sympathy for what may be a high number of sexual partners, a high risky sexual behavior on the basis of trauma. Well, with a Black boy, you can have him abused, raped, damn near killed, and it's still, well, that's just how Black men are. That's the difference, right? The difference is one person says there are sociological or epidemiological reasons for certain behaviors. There's a social context.
basically what they're saying is that, and this just came out with the school thing, right? Okay, the reason that black boys fail, the reason that they're problematic, is because they're biologically defective. That's that's what they want to say. They're just defective. So you can't like I said, can anything good come out of Nazareth, right? Can anything good come out of the black male collective? Because we're supposed to be defective. Uh, too watchful, BTS. I've said this many times. Black men and women believe a boy's beating is not as bad as the girl's essay. The community won't address this. No, they won't, because they believe, and I've heard this. Okay, being abusive and mean to a black man is what keeps him in line. Okay, the biggest thing is keeping that man under control. It's like beating a dog. Okay, you beat the dog to keep him under control. That's what they're afraid of. Okay, yeah, I was listening to this yesterday. Right, being nice to a black man, being appreciative to a black man, will make him. Women believe that if they're not mean and they're not strict, that a black man will abuse her. That's what they're taught. In other words, a black male is a dangerous thing. So basically, you have to handle black male with a long handle spoon. Okay, you cannot be too nice. You cannot let up. If you let up, the black man will devour you. That's what they believe. They really do. Believe it or not. Okay. Anyway, we'll finish up a little bit more of this, and then we're going to close out. We're not going to play the whole thing. Okay.
A history that we have to examine to understand what's making this individual do something. With a black man, it says, well, we don't need a history. That's just how black men are. And that's the difference that I say in my work between the sociological and ontological. Black men are made to be ontological remnants of a perilous existence. They're just what's left over after all the other humanity has been taken up, where everyone else has a humanity. So when someone acts violently or someone acts not lovingly towards another person, it's because something was taken away from them. And what we've done with black men and boys is we've really leaned into this idea that they're broken.
Yes.
Because it's elevated certain members of the black community.
Yes.
It's elevated certain leaders. The people
Irredeemably broken. Okay, not just broken, irredeemably broken.
People who make this argument about black men and boys, regardless of their political stance, is usually appreciated and rewarded within the academy. And mind you, this is for numbers. Like we talk about numbers, right? This is for people like the rate of black men's abuse of women, right? Talk about over the age of 18. It's not very different than black women's victimization or abuse of men, right? The rates of it, they don't measure perpetrators, they measure victimization. So black men are reporting being just as abused as black women are, right? When you're looking at other communities, like white communities or sexual minority communities, they're reporting higher levels of victimization.
Yes.
Right. So if you're bisexual or if you're queer or lesbian, right, you have higher rates of victimization. Not because you're gay, but because you're in degraded, marginalized environments and communities. The same communities you find other people, marginalized people like black people in. Right. But there's no explanation. People are not saying, hey, because you're gay, because you're homosexual or queer, or whatever your term may be, you're committing violence because you're fundamentally broken. So you can have a higher rate of victimization in that community. And nobody says the people in those communities are fundamentally more violent and broken. Oh, but look, you take the same liberal ideology, the same feminist politics, and you look at the numbers of black men, and they're lower than those communities. Are they equal to that of their women? Are they higher in victimization? They report more victimization of domestic abuse and child sexual abuse and early statutory rape, et cetera, than white communities. Their victimization is never concentrated on. They're broken. They're more violent. You see, that's what I mean about the disregard. Because, you have to understand, when I give these presentations, it's almost laughable. Because, the CDC puts these things in charts, right? And the charts for men and women are right next to each other. Marginalized people like black people, right? But there's no explanation. People are not saying, hey, because you're gay, because you're homosexual or queer, queer, whatever your term may be, you're committing violence because you're fundamentally broken. So you could have a higher rate of victimization in that community, and nobody says the people in those communities are fundamentally more violent and broken. Oh, but look, you take the same liberal ideology, the same feminist politics, and you look at the numbers of black men, and they're lower than those communities. Are they equal to that of their women? Are they higher in victimization? They report more victimization of domestic abuse and child sexual abuse and early statutory rape, et cetera, than white communities. Their victimization is never concentrated on. They're broken. They're more violent. You see, that's what I mean about the disregard. Because when I give, you have to understand, when I give these presentations, it's almost laughable because the CDC puts these things in charts, right? And the charts for men and women are right next to each other. So you can literally say 4.3 is the race for Black women, 4.4 is the race for Black men. You can compare that to some of the other data sets on sexual minorities, and nobody ever. And I've presented on domestic abuse and had to be at least a dozen times, if not more. And nobody's ever attended. No, not one person has said, "Wow, that's unbelievable that we've missed that many men suffer." The attention is always in, well, look at how many Black women suffer. Your conversation pointing out Black men means that you're negating this. I was like, no, I'm just showing them side by side. I'm trying to say that this is a problem within our communities. And every single time without fail, the overwhelming focus of this work is to say, of the response in the audience is to say, well, here are the excuses, or here are the reasons I think that women are sexual minorities have high rates. And I was like, but we're not arguing about their rates. The rates are given. I'm interested in why these numbers look like these numbers. We just can't conceptually get it, right? So what ends up happening is that Black men are pushed out of conversations as victims. Black boys are pushed out of conversations as victims. And because of that, there's no study of these populations as victims of violence at the hands of other men or women. And the only time you really get concession, both amongst the academy and pundits, is if you say men are abusing other men. You see, so the female perpetrator is taken out of the equation altogether. Sometimes I look at these conversations on Twitter, and I look at how conversations happen in the academy, and all the onus becomes, well, these Black men didn't tell me about it. And I'm confused, brother. I'm so confused. We don't believe that in a white supremacist patriarchal society, that women telling about their experience is going to necessarily bring justice. We believe that, right, that in patriarchal racist societies, these groups are marginalized, so the violence against them are not taken seriously. But then somehow when Black men say, well, look, people don't listen to us, right? Nobody acknowledges our pain and suffering. They're then blamed.
Yes.
Well, you're too silent about it. As if them saying, hey, these women, these men, these people are raping us and abusing us, making us penetrate them before our age of consent, that somehow that means that our just society is going to remedy it. Right. And that's why I say that it's always a contradiction. If you do not believe speaking up, or you believe that racism and sexism and patriarchy make certain kinds of violence as normal, why do you then put the responsibility on these marginalized and these children to speak up about their abuse against a whole system, culture, and environment that tells them that men can't be raped, especially Black men?
Exactly.
And then blame them for the problem not being solved instead of the people that are harming them.
Yeah, exactly. They blame Black men for the problem not being solved. So you like I said, the old thing about blame the victim. Okay, like Black women used to say about the Minority Report, blame the victim. They do the same thing.
They're often older women, they're caretakers, or men in their community. You see, that's what disgusts me. See, and this is what I meant earlier when I talk about the misrepresentation of our problems. It disgusts me because we don't study Black people as if they're entities that can be improved, that can have their conditions ameliorated, or who would fundamentally change if their circumstances change. We speak about Black men as if they were fundamentally born as the scourges of the earth.
Yes,
fundamentally even if they were educated, even if they were given the
yes. Speak, Tommy. Speak, Dr. Tommy.
Same opportunities as other groups, right, for freedom, that they would squander.
Yeah, yes. They said yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Exactly. It doesn't matter because they're fundamentally defective, right? Okay. They are.
I'm done with life, and it's all Jermaine's fault. It's always Jermaine's fault. I'm done.
Dusty, and it doesn't matter. We're fundamentally dusty, and we're irredeemable, and that's the way Black women treat us. Exactly. Not just at the bottom with Keisha in the ghetto, but also Karen, Black Karen at the top in academia. The exact same thing. That's why I always point out Michelle Obama. Okay, that same bullshit comes out of her mouth. The same bullshit that we hear, that we talk about, comes out of her mouth. The same stuff. Anyhow, all right, good people. That is my hour. Okay. Hell, we still got almost an hour's worth of Dr. Tommy. Okay, very good interview, Very good piece. What I don't know what time he's drinking today, that day where he was so open. Hope he gets some more of it, okay? Because we need more of it because he's spitting. That's what I liked about this interview. Tommy's spitting. Normally, Tommy's much more diplomatic and politically correct. Okay, but whatever got into him today, he's spitting. He is spitting. Michelle Obama is the number one black Karen. That is the fact. We're gonna start calling her Black Karen. Since Savannah, Georgia has a lot of this going on in their hoods, a big woman going crazy on a tiny little black boy, and there was nothing I could do about it. Yep. Chief Rock, appreciate you for the super sticker. Um, this has been on the docket. I wanted to highlight this because I actually wanted people to actually go look. Reason I'm showing it, not just my commentary. I actually want people to go back and look at the whole video because um, does he do it sometimes he does it in bits and pieces, but this is one of the few interviews where he called names, okay, with about BreadTube, with FD Signifier and the Conscious Lees and the other intersectional feminist professors that are on YouTube and social media, okay? He called names, okay, which is rare for Tommy. Tommy's much more politically correct than this. So very good interview. Shout out to the brother. I never knew TV. Okay, for the interview, he just let him roll. He let him spit. Okay, he let him cook, as we say. Let him cook with that hot grease. So, shout out to him. Um, uh, uh, Dr. Tommy always gives a lot of good references to actually go back and look up. Okay, like they said, the subculture of violence with Wolfgang. When he said it about the matrix, they actually say it inside that piece. Okay, about the matriarchy and the violence that black women actually put upon black men. In fact, later on in this piece, we didn't get to it. If you listen to it, he talks about the study between 1976 and 1992 when they were keeping track of it because they actually stopped keeping track of it that way. Okay, black men were actually way more abused than black women. Okay, way more abused than black women between 1976 and 1992 when they were keeping track of this shit for a good almost 20 years. Okay, black men were more abused than black women, but they never talk about that. They get swept under the rug. Anyhow, appreciate you guys. Okay, yeah, Eddie, if you're gonna get the book, man, okay, I should have done it. Don't go to Amazon. Go to eBay and get the book. If you go to eBay and get the book, you can get the book for less than $20. Okay, so whatever it is, okay, somebody bought the copyrights, okay, and they reprinted it on Amazon for 50, and I think they reprinted it on Amazon because they want to kill the book. In other words, they want to make the cost so high that most people won't buy the book because they want to keep it quiet. They did the same thing with Gold Dollars and Power. They raised the price of the book so that the vast majority of people will not invest. So if you're going to get it, go to eBay and get the Subculture of Violence for Wolfgang, as I should have because, okay, I spent 50, but the thing is, I could have got it on eBay for 12. But I wanted to get that Kindle. I wanted to get that clip of that paragraph before I forgot it because you very seldom see that in print. You can very seldom actually see that in print. It was only like a paragraph or two where they actually talk about the matriarchy and why black women abuse their men and their boy children. Anyhow, let me get out of here, folks. I will see you guys later. Oh, yeah. You know what? The thing is, and I was talking to somebody about this. I think it was on Art's channel last night, right? About sinners. If anybody sees sinners, the one thing that they mentioned that they snuck in that nobody talks about, okay, is about one about the twins and being beaten by the father. They never mention their mother. Okay, you would think that the twins weren't born of a woman. They never mention their mother. Okay, but they talk about killing their father because he used to beat them. Now, whatever happened to their mother, we don't know. I don't know if she ran away, she died. I don't know. Okay, but they never talk about their mother. Okay, same thing with Preacher Boy. Okay, first thing they asked him when they met back up with him, is your father beating you? Is your father beating you? That's Color Purple all day long. That's why I think that's probably why I'm not that fond of Sinners as a movie per se, is because I know Sinners is couched, even though it's couched as a black movie, it's actually a black woman's story for the most part. It's a black woman's movie. Strong ass black women, a lot of sex, and men that are violent for no reason. Men that are violent for no reason. Defective black men all over the place, right? They have, and the black women that have to put up with them. So it never stops. Even Ryan Coogler, but Ryan Coogler knows how to sell to black women, that's for sure, and he makes money off it. So Coogler, even though I like his work, Coogler is also a panderer. So here's what it is. Anyhow, let's get out of here. Yeah. And he buried his pops. Yep, that is a main part of the story about the twins. Anyway, the Jermaine's fault factor is why the Sinners is a hit. Yeah, it is. Easy way to sell. How do you sell to black women? Make black men the victim. Coogler is in the pocket of the black gynocrat, so that's where he makes his money. Anyhow, let's get out of here, folks. I will see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow, there's another PhD symposium, and she talks about how the feminist education actually changed the course of what we think about in society. Okay, how men are actually feminized. Okay, very, in fact, she said most feminists want to push her out of an elevator, down that elevator shaft. But we'll talk about that tomorrow.
What can I say? Mamba out.
Музыка Денис Шедер.